Welcome back to Natty Muscle Radio, where it's still all about natural bodybuilding. I'm super pumped. This week, I have a great guest from the UK, Dr. Andrew Chappell, WMBF pro bodybuilder, prep and posing coach. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me on, and top marks for the pronunciation of my name.
Did I get it right?
Oh, yeah, no, you got it spot on. That was really good. That was really good. I was pleased with that. So all the way over from the UK specifically, because people will wonder about this when you hear my accent. From the north, from Scotland, all the way up there. We're Celts. We do strongman and throw cabers, and we do drink whiskey. That's what we're all about. And we lift weights too.
I saw you do some strongman stuff on your Instagram,
eh? Yeah, I love that stuff, man. Like, I moved to the northeast of Scotland, right? And in the northeast of Scotland, that's where the Highland Games scene is. So everyone up there, they're like farmers, yeah? So they like to lift up big stones. They like to lift up these logs and throw them about all the place. That's where, incidentally, Luke and Tom Stoltman are from. You know, the world's strongest brothers.
They're yes.
Guys, they work in the oil rigs. They're great big men. So, I mean, when you move up there, one of the big things about that is it's a rite of passage as a Scotsman. You used to have to do what was a trial of strength, lift a big stone up, and then you were decided you were a man, yeah? So it's a big part of our culture. It's a part of other culture. So yeah, I love the strong man as well. But we're getting ahead of ourselves and away from ourselves.
We are, but I have a quick off-topic question that I wanted to slip in there, because your Instagram is fueled by Scott's Oats. So I'm kind of curious what Scott's Oats exactly are.
I wish I had a box of them in the background here. In the UK, there's a brand of porridge oats, right, called Scott's Oats. And on the cover of the cereal box, there's a picture of a guy in the kilt, and he's got a, what would you call it? A hammer a shot put. He's doing his shot put. He throws it, right? So and my PhD in nutrition was on oats and barley. So I'm a doctor of oats.
Oh, I see. Oh, nice.
So this is why I'm fueled by Scott's Oats. This is it. People ask, so now you know.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd like to see what those are like sometime. It's so interesting, different countries with different styles of foods, even if they're within the same category of food, right? So
yeah, of course. I'm, like I said, I thought we'd clarify first. I'm from the north. I'm as Scottish as they come.
Awesome. So we're going to focus today's discussion around the art of posing, which obviously Andrew is quite passionate about. So I'm going to go into my first question here. So I know you and Steff get a lot of people, coming to you for in-person posing. So what are some of the most common problems you see with someone posing, especially for the first time?
Oh gosh, for the first time as a caveat, there's so many things, so many things. And just to caveat, my partner Steff, she's the other half of Pro Prep coaching. She is a WMBF pro herself and traveling, touring, posing coach as well. So we go all over the UK, posing different people, helping them out, get themselves ready for competition. And we work with people online as well to try and help them get to where they need to be. But common problems, gosh, where to start? When you see them on stage, when you see them in the studio, probably lack of posing fitness, first and foremost. They just inability to hold the isometric poses for any length of period of time, inability to hold them without gurning, without facial expressions getting in the way as well. Because remember, you've got to be marketable and likable on stage as well. So you can't have any of that. Probably you get the opposite as well, where people are too flamboyant in their nature as well. They need to tone it down. We see people who are lazy in terms of people who are maybe experienced competitors who just don't hold the poses for all that long. A lack of confidence is very common. So people coming in here, they're not sure how big they are. They don't know how good they are at the same time. People making themselves look small from here. And then there's some sort of genetic ones that you can get down into all those things. But that's a good overview, I think, initially on people in terms of the things you see when they come into the studio when they first start out. Does that resonate with your own experience?
Yes, especially actually one thing that came to my mind is the facial expressions, because especially in 2019 when I started to integrate more of the abdominal vacuum into a lot of my poses, like like not just the ab and thigh, like even the front double and even a little bit on the front lat spread, kind of a semi vacuum.
Uh,
I got
Got a
some
great
pretty
vacuum,
bad.
by the way.
What's that?
I said, you've got a great vacuum, by the way. You're good at
Oh,
that.
thanks. I worked on that a lot last year. But I noticed I kind of got a lot of sour grapes face in my pictures coming back, just because the vacuum is kind of another level of kind of discomfort to kind of hold as you're going through your poses. So I got a lot of my pictures back, and I was like, man, like I would love to post this shot, but my face just looks
Yeah,
really bad. So it's something I'm going to
100%.
try and work on a little bit more. I think the first step is to just be more aware of it and be like, okay, hit your pose, make your face look normal type thing.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I wrote an article on this for my
I
for
read
my
that the other
website.
day. That was a great
Oh, did
article.
you read it?
I'm gonna link that. Yeah, that was really good. That was really good, by
Yeah.
the way.
I mean, you've got to think about this. I mean, my big hero for bodybuilding is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just based on my age, watching his movies growing up and so on. And he was an absolute master. He went on to be a Hollywood actor and so on. Everyone knows the story. But he knew and got it at a time that he not only had to be an athlete, he had to display the artistic element of it, but he was also an entertainer. And he had to make it look effortless and he had to be marketable. So he knew all these sort of things at the same time. So when you seen him stand on stage, it was a big smile. It looked easy. It looked effortless. He was a total master. And that's what you need to try and replicate when you're getting yourself out on stage as well at the same time. Because from a judge's perspective, and I should mention that I've judged, I don't know, 50, 60 shows. I judged for a long time with the BNBF, and I've judged internationally. When you're sitting from the judges panel and you're looking at these people on stage, the grimacing doesn't help you. The scowling doesn't help you. You're just naturally drawn to the person that's smiling, is cheery. It's like when you walk down the street, as I say in that article, someone smiles at you, smile back, and you're drawn to them. If someone looks at you in disgust, then, well, you quickly look away or you don't want anything to do to them. So, yeah, I think it's an important point on the grimacing.
It also, to say it another way too, if you see someone who's like struggling to hit their poses and just like have a hard time getting in and out of them, shaking a lot, as someone who's a bodybuilding fan, it's really actually hard to watch. And I
Yeah,
understand it's a lot to get together, especially for your first show. There's a lot of
yeah,
skill that goes into it, but it's pretty easy to pick out bad posing, and it hurts to watch, doesn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, I'm talking about facial expressions here. You're talking about it hurts to watch bad posing. And I mentioned the judging element. I mean, one of the things we're talking about here is we love posing from the artistic element because we love the human form and everything like that. But it's a competition at the end of the day, and you lose points. I mean, shows are won and lost based on this stuff. So it has to be a crucial element, part of your training, and just like doing the double biceps. Doing the bicep training in the gym or the thigh training or anything like that, you need to have it structured in your plans, so that when you go on stage, that you can perform in that particular element. It's a skill you need to be able to try and perfect.
So that's kind of a great segue there. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
when you're training someone for a show, one of your competitors or just one of your posing clients, like how do you suggest they integrate the posing practice into their like daily routine? Because you know what it's like in prep, like your energy gets lower and lower.
Yeah.
You have to cut out time to pose. It starts to become quite a nuisance with everything you get going on, especially with the decreased energy. So
Yeah.
I'm curious what you have your people do for that.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what I do, and then I give the same sort of advice to my clients, if you like.
Absolutely.
So when I start posing, I say this to my clients as well. I start the posing practice immediately as my prep starts. So it starts from day one, is what I'm doing it, and I will do it and suggesting my clients to do it first thing in the morning, and I do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I take the weekend off just for a rest. I do it first thing. I like to do it that time of the day because you know what it's like when you get up on stage. You're probably not in great shape. You're maybe a little bit dehydrated. You've maybe not had great sleep the night before. Stress, anxiety might be a little bit high. You're covered in tan. It's not the ideal situation to try and do it. So I try to replicate a little bit of that by waking up first thing in the morning where I'm a little bit tired, a little bit groggy. I've not had any food or anything like that, to try and get some sort of semblance of that, if you like. So first thing in the morning, I do it instead of doing morning cardio. I'll do 20 minutes. What I try to do is, someone once said to me, I think it was Rob Hope, great bodybuilder, he could hold that front relax pose for 3 minutes like a statue. So I've always sort of made that like my benchmark from there. So I'll hold that front relax pose for 2 minutes, and then I'll go into the other rounds there after that. So front relaxed, then I'll do the quarter turns, go to the rear, and I time myself with a stopwatch so that I'm absolutely getting in that amount of time. And I'll do 3 rounds. That usually will take you about 7 minutes in the morning of those poses. And then I move into doing the muscularities as well. So I'll do all 8 poses after that. And then once I've finished it all, I go back to doing the front relax pose thereafter that. So that all in will take you around about 20 minutes to do that sort of thing as well. The quality is really important though, because every time I'm doing the front relaxed, I'm transitioning into the next pose, and then into the next pose, I never actually physically relax. So I should call it front pose rather than front relax to get the nomenclature right here for when we're talking about this, so no one's confused. But the quality is always really important. So I'm always on the legs. I'm always sucking my stomach in. I've always got my chest high. And when you do that, if you do that first thing in the morning and you can do that for 20 minutes and hold those poses and go right through all the rounds and hold those poses, even when you're doing between the muscularity shots as well, you'll sweat and you'll get a really good workout. And that's a really good glycogen depleting workout that you're going to get from that, from holding those isometric poses. So that's what I do. And I recommend that my clients do that. Now, starting off trying to hold a front relax pose for 2 minutes, that's tough. Yeah. So you have to build up to that. I start them off at trying to do 30 seconds. Then they go up to a minute. If you can hold a minute, then you can then do 2 minutes. Doing the 3 rounds is what I try and get them to do, because very rarely are you going to be on stage for much more than 20 minutes, I would say. That's probably about your upper end. Although the WNBF Worlds the other year there had us up there for like 40 minutes or something crazy. But
they go at it hard. Yeah,
yeah, true. I know. And he didn't do any call outs. I mean, that's the thing, right? When you do a call out and you go to the back of the stage, you can rest. When they did it with us, they just like, no, guys, we're just going to savages.
Yeah, so, I remember actually watching that Worlds, and I thought I expected them to do call outs, but then I actually I listened to the podcast with I think it was with AJ, and it was with the guy Lee Kemp, I think it was, and
yeah, that's right.
And they explained that they didn't do callouts because they just wanted to see everyone kind of next to each other, and they kind of debated it a little bit. I'm used to that. I'm used to watching like the IFBB stuff as a fan of bodybuilding, so I was like, "Where's the callouts at?" You know. But I guess sometimes they do it different over there.
Well, I mean, that's a ton of. I think I must have done about 30 shows, and like I said, I've judged about 50 or something like that. I don't think I've ever seen it done like that, to be honest with you. Call-outs are pretty normal. That's what you expect. It kind of gives you an opportunity to compare physiques a lot more as well. I mean, when there was about 25 guys or 30 guys in that lineup, how do you compare the guy that's at this end of the stage, on the far right, to the guy that's on the far left, or even the guy that's 5 spaces in and 5 spaces in, from left and right? And the call-outs allow you to make those comparisons. So, but you can debate that for sure.
I agree too, because as someone who was actually watching whatever live feed there was, it was really hard to kind of see what was going on. Probably if you were a judge there, you could see it, but it was just a lot of stuff to process in all at once. But circling it back around to the front relaxed pose, I think it's interesting you spend most of your time there, because it really does make sense, because you're going to be out there and they're moving you around. You're probably going to spend, probably like 70% of the time in that front relaxed pose, right? So it does make sense to be like a statue on that pose if, compared to any other pose. That's the one you have to be in the longest, so you got to practice it the hardest.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
So another thing that I found difficult with my preps at the end is when to cut out the mirror, in terms of like when to stop using it as feedback, because I found I tended to rely on it quite a lot, and I would try and tape back my posing. And then I would be like, oh, I'm missing this, I'm missing that, right? And it was really frustrating, because then at that point it was like 2 weeks out. So I think for myself, I might start a little bit earlier getting rid of it, but I'm kind of curious how you do that.
I mean, it's a good question. It really is. I mean, my preps are probably like 25 odd weeks plus. So if I'm starting posing at day 1 5 times a week, you can imagine by the time you get 20 odd weeks in with 5 weeks out of the show, it's automatic at that point. It's completely automatic. You've acquired a skill a hazard to say you could do it blindfolded, but I mean, you get the idea that, I mean, you don't have the mirror anymore. And from there, what I would do, and with my preps as posing practice, is I do those 3 rounds in the morning, like I was describing, and then I would do the first round in the mirror, and then I do 2 rounds not in the mirror thereafter. So I'd get the positions and everything like that, know that I'm hitting the shots really, really well. And then I do it without a mirror from there. I was doing that probably about maybe 4 weeks out from the show. I'd cut the sort of mirror out by there from that point there. Does that sort of answer the question from there?
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, do you film it as well, all your posing practice?
Yeah. I think this is a really important point, actually. Filming is a really good thing to do. Pictures are useful. Pictures are definitely useful. They have their place, no doubt about it. But I think the filming allows you to pick up on so many other sort of little different things, particularly the transitions in the shot. It can help you see what's going on in terms of the breathing, if things are going on there. A classic one's a tricep shot. You see guys will curve all the way forward, then all the way back to try and show off more of the tricep in there. And when you watch it back in the video, sometimes you can see, actually, that doesn't look quite as good doing it from there. So maybe I'm better at holding the shot. You pick up things like fidgeting. I was murder when I first started posing. It wasn't until I think about 2 years of bodybuilding, and one of my friends who was helping me at the time said that he'd got the video back from the show. He says, in between every pose, Andrew, you're shaking your hands. I was like, I'm doing what? Like, I had no idea. Like, I was doing this. And like, I started in 2006, and believe me, like, camera phones are not what they are now. Like, they are crap, to put it politely.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about my online coaching services. Team St. Jean Physique Consulting has been coaching a wide variety of clients since 2016. So if you maybe want to win one of these, or just shape up a little bit, go ahead and send an email to connorstjean@gmail.com, and I'll get right back to you with more information. All right, now back to the podcast.
Up on stage to see what was going on. So yeah, filming's really useful, really useful. You can set the film up with a tripod and then film yourself when you're posing as well. It's not as same as having a big mirror, and maybe that could be a bit of a segue or a transition away from using the mirror because it's a smaller screen. But yeah, definitely film yourself and see what's going from there. Routines, 100% film yourself as well, obviously.
Absolutely. So do you have any guidelines when it comes to designing like a posing routine, or like maybe even picking music or deciding what poses to include and what poses not to include? I find this is something that a lot of first timers really struggle with too. And I remember my experience, like it's pretty awkward to create a posing routine for the first time, right? Even if it is only 60 seconds. Yeah,
for sure. Everyone's different. Everyone's really different. I mean, you can go all the way back to that first question about what are the common things you see. When you're working with so many different people, you see so many different personalities, and some people are really natural at this. Like, particularly if they come from a dancing background, a performance background, those people pick this up much more so. I think I'm naturally more extroverted, so for me, it was never really as much of an issue to just try and throw something together and work it out and go from there. Other people much more challenging, and that's why as a posing coach, I'm here to help people out to get that confidence so they can put their routines together. But things to bear in mind. Choose a number of songs, I think is what I would say. So probably have 5 or 6 songs that you want to select from. And be aware that some of them are just not going to work. The tempo might be too slow, the song might be too long, the intro's not too long, the poses don't quite flow at a certain points within the music. So you've got to be prepared to use a writer's term, murder your baby. So even though you love that song, you just have to throw it by the wayside from there. So choose a number of different songs for a start. I think choosing something that kind of works, that means something to you and resonates with you, because it's a personal thing, I think is a good one from there. People put music changes into their songs. That can work, but if you're going to do it, keep it to a minimum. I mean, one's probably your best. But I've seen people do 3 and 4 music changes in a song, and it can be a bit disjointed. And by that, I mean having one track, then
segue to the next,
another one into it, and then mixing another one into it from there. Swearing's not particularly good in songs. People don't particularly like that. I'm afraid heavy metal, and in terms of the proper screaming stuff, just doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's my favorite genre of music, but I know I can't put that in a routine because I know the crowd won't like it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work. And you touched on an important thing about the crowd, and I'll come to that. Certain stuff does, like, I mean, Rammstein, everyone seems to like that, and people will love like Metallica and stuff, but that proper screaming stuff, I'm afraid it just doesn't work. Not in my experience from there. So those are some things. You should make an effort. So put some practice in. So you see it when someone's actually made an effort and not made an effort on there, because their routines are quite quickly forgettable on there as well. Take your time when you're posing and you're transitioning through the shots. So I think I was listening to Lee Labrada once, and I think he said probably holding each shot for between 5 and 6 seconds. So in a posing routine, that gives you, including the transitions, etc., maybe 10 shots you're going to hit. Because if you do too many, it can look a bit disjointed as well at the same time. So those are a number of things that I've written down here. Something current in terms of music tends to work well, something that the crowd like. Try not to be overly self-indulgent, if that makes sense in terms of a song as well. But I think those things are good sort of starting points for people about picking music, putting something together around there. Does that all make sense?
It does, and I have some experience too, helping clients pose. Definitely not near to the point where that you do, but I always try and get them to choose something that is fairly recognizable. It doesn't have to be pop music, but something that like at least a lot of the crowd knows or can remember easily. Something that just because I feel like when you get out there, you want to speak your language, right, and you want to use it in you want to use a form of music that speaks to them, right, or that they already kind of know, and they're like, oh, I know that song, and now I can kind of get into the routine, right? So if you choose a song that a lot of people like, you have a higher chance of just reaching more people with your posing, right?
I think that's
and I mean,
I think that's really good. Yeah, I agree 100% with that.
And one thing I did too in 2019 was, I like the screaming metal. That's my favorite stuff. That's what I listen to in the gym. But I know that doesn't really have much of a place on stage. And so I literally posed to Ariana Grande in 2019, right? Because like it was like a really popular song. Everyone knows it. And then I was just like, I can't just put my musical tastes on everyone and expect it to go, right? So those are some things I tell people, and I really like to get into the editing process with it because I have a bit of a musical background. So I'll take the track and be like, okay, we need a beginning, middle, and end of the song. So we gotta find like the beginning, which is probably like the verse, the middle, which might be the bridge, and the end, which might be the chorus, something like that, right? Something that you get in and out really quick because most routines are about 60 seconds.
I think that's all great advice. I think that's really, really good. I agree. I think choosing a track that people recognize doesn't have to be something necessarily popular, but something that people will go, oh, I know that track. That's from that movie that I really liked, or that's that pop song that was out 4 or 5 years ago that was really popular, that was really fun, or just something that people recognize works quite well. That might mean something to you as well. The point you made about the start, middle, and end, that's something that I always try and do with the posing routines that I help people with and with my own routines. There's a starting point. Maybe it's on the floor. Maybe I'm walking out to it. There's a clear end point. Maybe it's you finishing a shot. Maybe your arms are folded. Maybe your hands are across your face. Something like this from there. And then you've got your middle shots that you're going to hit throughout. I always encourage people to do their research. So I always say, okay, well, if we're going to put together a routine, why don't you get yourself on YouTube? I mean, it's a great resource. You can find, there's probably hundreds of thousands of people doing different bodybuilding routines on stage, but you can find some really good ones. I mean, great posers in the male categories. And for me are Sean Ray, Lee Labrada, Darren Charles, Melvin Anthony, Ed Corney, Francis Benfato. I mean, these are the sort of style of posing and the guys that I like to see on stage. They're really, really nice. Terence,
Ruffin.
Yeah, he was
Rough
great
Diesel,
this
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Yeah, what a great poser he is, Rough Diesel. And so if you can go and have a look at that, then you can see how you can put something together quite nicely. And then it's a case of putting the music track on and then just trying to put your favorite poses together in a sequence. And then you slowly start to work through it. Highlighting your strengths and hiding your weaknesses. So if you've not got the rear double bicep shot, then don't hit it.
I actually remember there was a competitor around here, really good, and he did his routine, and it was a great routine, but he didn't hit a single back shot. But it was a great routine. I can't fault him for it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I've seen it before. I've seen guys do it before, and people forget that round's sometimes judged. I mean, not every federation judges it, but it is sometimes judged. And I have seen, and I've done it myself from the judge's position, moved people up and down on the scorecard based on their evening performance with their round 3 routine, because they were able to highlight their strengths, hide their weaknesses better than someone else, or they've came in a little bit tighter at that nighttime show than they were in the morning show, and that's been enough to flip-flop them around. That happens. So,
and I know when I did WMBF in New York, they said if it was close during, and from a physique judging perspective, they would use the routine as like a tiebreaker.
Yeah. So there you go. I think one of the things that maybe scares people about routines is some people think it's like a dancing competition a little bit, and people think, oh my gosh, I can't dance. It's not a dancing competition. I think it's worth pointing out. You just need to be competent in that round. So for a beginner, and they become more elaborate as you get more experienced, if you can hit the mandatory shots, all 8 of those shots in a sequence well, then that's very often enough. That's all you really need. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Absolutely. It's really just how well you can present it. So there's so many ways you can be creative with it, right? So you got to find the way that works for you and just kind of stick with it and then kind of hone your style in, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've done so many different posing routines. I've done all different types of music. I've used props and things like this as well down the years. I remember I did a Motley Crue shout at the devil, where I had like a devil's mask and a cape and like a trident and stuff. I don't know if it worked.
It's entertaining though, right? Like,
well, I don't know. I think taste is subjective.
Well, you know what? I tell people this. It's like the entertainment part, it matters. You know, people come to the night show and they might not even know what bodybuilding is, but if someone does kind of something special like that, that's probably going to break up some of the monotony of like this person and this person and this person, especially if there's a lot of bad posing that precedes that, right? So I always applaud anyone who wants to try anything unique like that.
I agree as well. One thing I noticed, I'll tell you this, is between the UK, I maybe don't want to say Europe, but maybe the UK and America, particularly when it comes to the nighttime show, you guys over in North America, you just want to be entertained.
Yes.
You guys go in for the props and things like that much more so. If someone does like a backflip in their routine, or like I've seen people do magic tricks, you guys love that stuff. In the UK, I mean, we're probably much more naturally prudish. We're like, oh yes, we need to do it classically. We're having none of this nonsense. So that stuff goes down more so over in the States. That's an interesting difference, I think.
That's awesome. So let's go ahead and get into some of the nuances here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Of some of the poses here. So I have some things up here. Where are we at?
I think this was a great idea, I should say, Connor. And I think some of the things that you asked the question right at the start about what are the common things that people do when they come into the posing studio that you spot, particularly in beginners. And I never sort of mentioned them all because there's so many different things, but we'll be able to maybe point them out here with these particular pictures. Like one I know you talk about, like people dropping their chest or maybe not crunching their abdominals at the right time, etc. from here.
All right, so Here we go. You recognize these guys?
Yeah, so that is Mark Claxton right in the middle, and then Nathan Williams, which would be on Mark Claxton's left or on the screen on the right. I'm afraid I don't quite recognize the guy on the left. His name doesn't come to mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but let's go ahead and break down the way they're hitting it. So what I noticed first is Nathan is leaning a little bit forward, it seems. Do you have your guys do that or not?
Do you know what? You had a question lined out for us about genetics and so on.
Yes.
Everyone's body shape is a little bit different. And because of those differences in body shape, it lends you to maybe hitting the shots in an ever so slightly different way. And this is a nice example because all three guys are hitting the shots ever so slightly different. What Nathan's doing is he's pushing his hips back a little bit. And what that's doing is because he's pushing his hips back and he's leaning forward, that's shortening his torso. And it shortens his torso and it can make him look like he's got an even more crazy V-taper.
V-taper, yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you picked up on that as well. Now, that works for him in that shot there. But if I was with him in the posing studio, what I might suggest to him is, well, Nathan, let's just see what it looks like if you just stand up a little bit more tall, like Mark is in the middle there, and see how that goes. The other thing that I'm noticing he's doing is he's bending his knees, and he's probably, again, it's working for him, but I'd like to see what he looks like a little bit, standing a little bit taller on this, rather than kind of squatting down a little bit there, because he might have a more pleasing look based on if he did those things. But I mean, he's a great bodybuilder. It's a great shot from him, but those are just little subtle differences that you pick up on for there. Mark's probably hitting the shot, the guy in the middle, much more like how I normally hit it myself. But I, like you do, I try and practice that vacuum to give me that tighter looking waist, to give me more an exaggeration of a V-taper. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting too. Everyone takes a different strategy with how they kind of like position their torso. I think too, like sometimes if you're in the audience, it can look good if you're looking straight on, but the more you kind of like change your torso position, leaning back, leaning forward, doing this, once you start to get, if you're watching it from the side, it starts to look a little funky sometimes, I think.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. So the worst bodybuilding show I ever went to was hosted in a nightclub, and they set the chairs up looking at the side of the stage. So you could only see it side on because there wasn't a lot of space. And they had the judges lined up in a row looking front on. And the audience cleared out of that place within about 10 minutes of the show starting because it just doesn't work looking side on like that. So yeah, you're totally right. The angle matters, like from the sides and so on. It just sometimes doesn't look right.
Okay, so I got another one here, and I tried to stick to mostly stage shots, but I thought this was a good one to kind of talk about. Do you keep your chest up or do you crunch down? So this is the side relaxed pose. So if this is Brian Whitaker, and this is on the left, we have him in 2012, and on the right, we have him on 2013. So I noticed when I was going through these videos, watching him pose, he would kind of hit the shots different ways. So what do you see here? Which one do you like better, first off?
I mean, between 2012 and 2013, you can see he's made significant improvements. So right off, I'm drawn to the one on the which would be the right hand side because he's just more muscular.
Yes.
And even though in the one on the left, where he's got his chest nice and high and he's not crunching down, I'd be more drawn to that one naturally, just because he's much more muscular. The one on the right is the one that I'm going to sort of err towards. I don't know, what do you think on that one?
I agree. I like that better, but this is something I find interesting because the common advice for posing is kind of like chest up, open up, look big, look dominant. So
yeah, agreed.
And as I tried to do that, I found myself kind of more going to these kind of crunch versions because it would show more muscularity. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a bit of a debate because if you're a really big guy with like kind of the more round muscle and a big bone structure, maybe looking more dominant and opening up more and crunching down less is a bit to your advantage. But someone like Brian is more of not kind of like medium-sized frame and like has all the detail, like all the bells and whistles for the striations, right? So I think he's getting more mileage out of his physique crunching down here, because you see all those obliques crunching up. You see more striations in the chest that way. So I kind of prefer that.
I think the thing that he's doing on the one on the right-hand side, where he's crunching down though, which he doesn't do on the one on the left, which I think would have really helped him, is he's more rotated on the right-hand side post.
More the back shoulder coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would have made his waist look much smaller, and his abdominal region look much more aesthetic when it comes from here. The other thing I'd say as well is the foot position and both the shots. Typically, the way we teach it is that you put your feet parallel to the line that would be on the stage, or you shift it 5 degrees off to the back corner of the room, and that tilts the hips ever so slightly, and it allows you to rotate that little bit more. Coming back to the previous pose though, you said, and it's the same with this one. When I work with people in posing, I've probably got like a baseline of this is how we're going to hit the shots. And then once we've seen them in those base positions, it's then about, okay, well, what works for you in terms of tweaking you here and there and so on. Just like you said there about maybe it's going to work better for you in this position or that position.
Yep, absolutely. And I noticed too, some of what I've seen you do, I think, is like your position on this side leg is a little bit different. Like I think I've correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've seen you bend this a little bit sometimes. And to me, his quad looks a little bit more locked out here.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, that's a good observation. I agree. Yeah, something that can give you a little bit more thickness sometimes as well. Some people are struggle with bending it too much, and they can look a little bit squat. Some people need to stand a little bit more up. When I'm practicing my posing, and again, when I'm practicing with my guys, I take the time to look, okay, does it look better in the mirror standing up or down? And I've got the advantage of having a partner who's a posing coach. You can say, Andrew, try it like this or try it like that, or see things where I've got blind spots.
Right on. All right, let's move on here. See if you recognize this guy.
Oh, yes. Gosh. Okay. So what to say about this?
I think it's interesting too. So you take more of, like, to me, this looks more like 1980s, 1970s type front relax. So you're kind of angling off your hip. You're putting this side of the hip a little bit back and this a little bit forward.
Go on.
Tell me why you chose that.
That's my style, man. That's what I like. The guys that I listed off to you earlier on in terms of the bodybuilders that I tell people to go and check out, your Labravas, your Ben Fatos, etc. That's how a lot of those guys pose, and I really just dig the classical posing. I think it suits my physique. I've not got that small a waist, so I tilt off that side ever so slightly, rotate my upper torso, and that gives me an exaggerated or a smaller looking waist than I otherwise would normally have if I was to stand front on, or at least that's my perception. But people have told me I look all right standing front on in the shot as well, but I kind of like it like that. I mean, what do you think?
Well, what I really like about this here too is you still have your knees bent a little bit, but you get all the detail in this quad, and that's something I have trouble doing because I don't really get it unless I lock out that knee very much. So I really like your lower body stance here too. I think it's like this, like I say, you have to see you hit it every way to see it. But I think as far as for what the vibe you want to give off and what your physique is, it's probably optimal. I mean, and you would know, you've probably spent 3 times as much time posing as I have. So yeah, I think it works. I think it's great.
I should say those trunks that I've got on there, those are bespoke. So when you look at a lot of guys' trunks, my particular trunks on there, see they're almost like a slight V that come down to the top of the trunk. That's because I've had them made like that compared to your standard trunk, which won't have that sort of cut. So little things like that can change the aesthetic ever so slightly. I'm always trying to replicate my heroes, the guys like your Frank Zanes and so on. So that's why I do it like that.
I think it's an important detail to pick out too. Like, you have this fitting right in that crease here, and you see a lot of guys, they let it fall down and it doesn't cut out a good enough taper on them.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know what you do backstage, but I use Bikini Bite, the same thing the bikini chicks do. And everyone's like, what's this guy doing using that? It's like, my trunks won't fit in the right spot if I don't glue them in.
I have considered it. I don't think it's an unsensible thing to consider. I have considered. I've never done it. I tend to, in my front lat shot, do the thing where like a Lee Haney and so on, and grab the end of my trunks and pull them up a bit. So I wouldn't be able to do that sort of thing if I did that. But yeah, I know what you mean. I had thought about doing it as well.
All right, let's check another here. So I think let's do these guys. This is from a WMBF World sometimes. So
I know this is Siobhan and Cunningham, Brian Whitaker, and
Cleveland Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, good. Well, the first thing, this is an interesting one to point out on what you just said earlier on about sort of looking at it slightly at an angle on here. So this would look a little bit better if it was front on, but it does demonstrate that point right there. Cleveland in the middle, I think the aesthetic just looks a little bit off because what he's doing is he's tilting his head back rather than just leaving it at the straight on like Brian is and like Siobhan is. As you mentioned, Siobhan for me is the bodybuilder of the decade, by the way. He's probably done more shows and had more top placings and has been more consistent than nearly anyone, save Dave K. But I don't care. I'll say it anyway. I don't think Siobhan's a great poser. I think if he posed, but it's not really. I think this year, if he'd posed a little bit better, he would have won that WNBF title. But Brian took it from him. In this shot, what I normally get my guys to do is stick their glutes out a little bit further back and then curve over in the lower back with the upper torso. And what that does is it shortens the torso length a little bit and it can give you a more exaggerated V-taper in here. Based on what Cleveland's doing, looking at, I think he's pinching his shoulders ever so slightly together and he's not opening up quite as much.
Ruining his taper, yeah.
Brian's really working on his glutes because that's a strength for him.
Yeah.
And he's trying to show that conditioning more so than sticking his glutes out to sort of show the shape a little bit more. Because in fact, I noticed a post you put on your Instagram page was to that effect.
Yes,
talking about that particular point. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you agree with that analysis, or have you got your own take on these things?
I do. I think Brian's hitting it to maximize his physique here. And I think it's interesting when you say extend, like push the hips back a little bit and extend the back. Like, and I think you could also compare that to just keeping your chest up a little bit because your back will extend a little bit.
I agree.
And that is probably the amount of lean back you want. Some of the problems I've had with trying to get all the detail here is, and we're going to touch on this in a minute with one of the posts Mark Claxton made, but it's if you push these hips forward too much, you start to kind of stretch the lat at this point here, and then you can kind of lose some of the thickness of the lat. So I think he's doing a pretty good job keeping everything together here and showing all the detail and not changing his body position too much.
This is one of the big things about, see if you can film yourself.
Yeah.
Then you can, because we can all see ourselves in the mirror in the front, but it's from the back shot. Then you can work out for yourself and see what looks good for you in that pose.
Absolutely. So this is what I find really interesting, and I want to kind of break this down a little bit. So he says, this is Mark Claxton, no filters and no scared dog here. If you're in condition, you're in condition. Don't force something that's not there, or something that is already there and destroy any lower back thickness you do have. If you know, you know. So I think this is interesting. So you can kind of see he's definitely arching back there a little bit, and he's not really pushing his hips forward. And obviously he's got some crazy glute development, and you can still really see it. It's crazy. So I'm kind of curious, like what's your take on this? Like, because I see guys like Brian Whitaker in the other back shots, and I think he does push his hips forward a little bit, but he seems to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to maximizing the strengths in your own physique. So if the shredded glutes are the thing that you think are going to win you the competition, rather than maybe not pushing the hips back as much and trying to exaggerate the back fitness that you might possibly have, then that's up to you. What Mark's doing here is, as you say, he's keeping himself not tucked under. So he uses the expression, the scared dog. So if if you scold a dog, they run away with their tails between their legs. But that's
Right.
what he's sort of talking about with the scared dog on here. It's a balance for absolutely sure. I think there's some, I know, Mark. So there's maybe a bit of, I'm just going to say it, hypocrisy here, because you've got to be open-minded to, there's more than one way you can do it to maximize the strengths and weaknesses. And in this shot, I think actually if Mark brought his elbows a little bit further forward, then you could open up his back a little bit more and show a little bit more of his strengths that he's got in his physique. But you know, he's a great competitor, and he's well entitled to his opinion if he thinks that's the best way to do it. I would edge towards him. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And I mean, I think we're going to see a common theme here. It's going to be like, get the most out of your physique with your style of posing, right? I think if you do anything really funky, like pushing your hips really far forward and leaning really far back, it's just going to look weird. But little things like that can make the difference in how your physique looks. Now that we're kind of on this topic of the back stuff, I want to go to the back double, because I think it kind of rolls into the discussion that we're already having here. So here we go. So I think this is from the same show as we were just doing with Siobhan and them, and this is Brian's class. So these guys are all leaning back. This guy quite a bit, and I think from this angle, the cameraman, it looks okay. But I think sometimes when you start to lean back this much, depending on the lighting in the venue, all this detail here starts to get lost because the light's not hitting it anymore. So I think that's something you need to be aware of when you're trying to figure out how far back you want to lean.
I agree. There's 100% a balance. And when I look at some of my shots, I think, oh gosh, I've maybe leant a bit too back there on that one from there. So no, I'm inclined to agree. Your bodybuilder on the far left there, if he rotates his fists a little bit more and takes his elbows back a little bit more, so goes from here to here, then I think he'd do much more so for his development as well at the same time. But I think that's a nice balance. When you look at Brian in that shot as well, though, I mean, you can see he's pushed his hips back a little bit and he's leaning back as well. So it's not like he's doing as Mark Clacton says, the so-called scared dog. I think the guy in the far right, though, is probably doing much more so of that.
Yeah, you can actually see his hips are a little bit tilted. So maybe this is a good kind of learning experience here. So you can see the hips are back. He's probably pushing the hips forward just enough to get the contraction of the glutes to get all that detail, but he's not excessively pushing it forward like on like a hip thrust or something, right?
Yeah, he's got great detail.
Awesome. All right, what else do we got here? Same kind of thing from a different angle. So now I think this is interesting to see. You can assume he's probably leaning back the same amount here, Brian. But now from this angle, you can't really tell as much, right? Because the way the cameraman is facing.
Yeah, I mean, that's sweet. The other shots that you showed of them doing the lat spread and at the angle, when you see Brian from this angle, I mean, it works. You're not going to argue that pose. When I said earlier on about Siobhan not being a great poser, you can see that example in the middle there. He's clearly crunching his shoulder blades together. He's not opening up at all. He's just not showing the strengths in his physique. It's a shame because, like I said, I think if he could have done if he posed a bit better, he would have won this title this year. And then Cleveland, it all looks good for Cleveland, except he's just leaning back with his head, and I think that just throws the symmetry a little bit. Yeah.
I think you're right, Siobhan. If he opened up a little bit here throughout the scapula and just rotated these arms, like you said, just back a little bit, because he's you're not really seeing how big his biceps are, because he has the best biceps on stage by far, no question, right?
He's got crazy arms. He's got crazy arms.
All right, let's see, posing.
Oh, there's a picture I know you had of me in the back double biceps, which is good. Let's put that one on, because there's a great thing that Dave Kay does that's worth looking at. He's probably got one of the craziest rear doubles going. I've not hit this shot as well as I kind of like to, actually. But if you look at Dave's legs here, what he does is he's rotated his heel in quite a significant amount on the one that is furthest back. And what that does is it really shows that outer sweep of the quad, and it makes his legs look absolutely ginormous. Whereas in my legs, when you're looking at them, I've probably put my foot a little touch further back and probably not being able to rotate my knee quite out as much. And I think going forward, I'm going to copy the style that Dave does. And I think I could probably bring my arms a little bit further down. I wonder if I hadn't quite finished hitting that shot yet to really show the height of the bicep. But I think that was a nice one that Scott and Dave. He's got a great back.
Yeah, I think that's something people don't think about too is, people think like your quads, for example, you can only see those in the front shot. So you can see clearly here, you see his vastus lateralis, like right, I'm circling here and right here, right? And it actually does enhance the shape and the X frame, if you can kind of show that off. And one of the big differences too is the IFBB guys in the 70s and the 80s, they kind of pose these legs together, right? And kind of straight on. They weren't so focused on the X frame, which has now become more of the modern thing to do, right?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. So that's flexibility. That is complete flexibility. And in that shot there, I'm trying my best now to try and improve the flexibility so that I can hit that shot a little bit more like Dave, so I can get a little bit more quad sweep, so I can look better in that shot. Alongside all the stuff I'm doing training in the gym. And the other thing is I'm trying to get a little bit more flexibility in my upper chest, because I think that if I can rotate my arms a little bit further around, then I've got more back muscle there to show off on there in that shot in the lat area. So that's a flexibility thing.
Something that's interesting to me too that you could talk about on the front and rear double bicep is this arm placement. And I really like David K's arm placement on this because he still has, like, obviously if you put your arms up too high, you're going to stretch the lat here, right? And it's going to look less dense, but he's just a little, this upper arm, the humerus is just a little bit upward here. And he's got a nice bicep over his delt. And he's still got lots of thickness here. And it's something I struggle with because I don't have a lot of biceps and I don't have a lot of lats. So I tend to be more in close to this position where you are here because I don't want to stretch this lat out too much because I don't have that much firepower there.
And this is something we do with guys when we get them in the studio. You just simply put them in the position and say, okay, what happens? Do your arms look better higher or lower? And you adjust it based on that.
Absolutely.
All good points, man. All good points.
Let's go to front double here. I got one of you. Oh, I have David's here. That's right.
Dave's, this is a great front double. This was 2014, I think. Yeah, it's a great shot. It's a great shot. People were arguing to say who was the best bodybuilder in the world that year. That was this is the year that Brian Whitaker won the WNBF Worlds. For me, Dave K was the best natural bodybuilder in the world that year.
I was just talking to that with some of my friends, and we're like, who is the greatest of all time in natural bodybuilding? And I said in the thread that I think David K would stand out because of the larger structure and the overall flow of everything, just proportion. I didn't really get into it, but I would love to see these guys up against each other.
I mean, I think if we took Dave and put Brian next to each other, Dave's about 20 pounds bigger than Brian, and he's just as ripped. And I think Brian, some shots from the front isn't as strong. And I don't think Dave's really got any weak shots. Certainly, so on that year, I would say those two next to each other. I'd have Dave or like I said, Siobhan probably is the best because just consistency. Those guys have competed repeatedly, got in condition repeatedly, and won things repeatedly in the last 10 years. Guys have done good as one-offs, but those two guys for me.
I noticed too, when you hit this shot, you tend to keep your arms a little bit higher. And I'm assuming it's because you're trying to show off the biceps a little bit more, kind of like puts them off into a little better kind of display with them up a little bit higher. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I've tweaked it. That's what I'm doing. I've said, okay, well, does it look better with my arms parallel to the floor, or does it look better when I'm just slightly higher up? And then I've decided I like it slightly higher up. I'm like that front relaxed shot that I showed you on. Everything's inspired for me by those classic guys. That's what I like. So I replicate the things that these guys do.
Absolutely. All right. Let's front. Oh, that's back lat.
I think we got that one, yeah. Front lat. Who have we got here?
We have the same WNBF Worlds. I think this was 2015. Yeah. So one thing that's interesting to me is where do you place your arms on this shot? Because you see it different here. Lowest, a little bit higher, up around the rib cage.
I think for me on this one thing that's interesting is if you look where Brian's put his knuckles into the side of his body, whereas the other two guys, their hands are in front of their body, and he's pushed that in. I think it's given that nice gap between his lats and his arms, and it's for me, it's allowed him to exaggerate his V taper that little bit more. So that the hand position is the first thing. Usually we just say though to people, put your hands in the smallest part of your waist and then push in, and that's the way I get guys to do it. And here, Cleveland's not looking particularly comfortable in that shot, is he?
No, not overly.
Neither is Siobhan, actually. Brian looks like he's probably got the best posing fitness between the three of those guys there, because he looks like he's, the facial expression, he's having less hassle.
Siobhan looks like he's almost leaning back just a touch. He
does, yeah. He does on this one. I mean, I wonder if it's a lack of fullness. If Brian could have done with a little bit more carbs on those days, and his chest could have been fuller, or maybe needs to lift the chest that a little bit more. But do you know what? The shot looks ace. He won the show, so his dietary strategy worked.
Absolutely.
So there's no point going back on it. That was potentially though a better shot for Siobhan, because it really shows the amount of muscularity that guy's got.
All right, let's see what we got with side chest. This is one that I find gets hit a lot of different ways too.
Yeah.
So look at this. We got three different ones here for sure.
Yeah, this is good. So let's go for this. So there's a few different things on this one here. I mean, you need to rotate it round. So I think for me, Brian could do with probably pushing his hips off to the back curtain a little bit more and come around with his upper torso a little bit more. And that would probably give him a smaller looking waist. And then if he brought his hands down to how Rich Gozecki on the far right-hand side is kind of hitting that shot, then I think that would help him, because I think it sort of cuts you off a little bit at the midsection. Sometimes you see that. Martin Daniels, who's in the middle, really big bodybuilder, and he's got his back arm. I don't know if this is the angle this photo's taken at, but it looks like it's a little bit untidy because his arm is all the way at the side and it's not close to his body like the other two guys are doing with this shot. And I think it would just look a little bit more aesthetic. I mean, what do you think on this one?
I think this is kind of your classic apples and oranges. So you get Brian crunched down, oblique showing. It's like, look at the detail, look at the muscularity, look at the craziness of the muscle. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you get Rich, opened up, big, chest high, bigger than everyone else on stage, showing that off to his best ability, right? I think when you think of side chest, I think of like size. I think of like Arnold hitting it. So I think like this is like a more classical representation of it. But I think it's just like they're all, I think this guy arm could be down more, but I think, you know, Brian and Rich are probably doing it to spec in terms of what they can get out of their physique. I will say though, when it comes to side chest, maybe there's a few examples here. You got to be careful. Like people start, like Brian's torso is leaning ever so slightly kind of in this direction here. You can overdo that and almost look like you're about to fall to the floor. I've seen people just do it too much, and I've seen people squat on this leg too much.
Yeah,
that's why I like Rich's the best here if I had to choose one. But I mean,
I would say that this is actually probably Brian's best shot. Actually, I think probably the side best. I think this is one of his strongest one, because Martin Daniels and Rich Gozecki are big guys, and Brian's like what, sub 170 pounds or something. So,
165. Yep.
Yeah, and he looks as big as these guys. So that's how good a shot that is for him. It's a really good shot.
Now he's sitting it from the other side, and I think this is his better side because WMBF gets you to hit it on both sides. Yeah. So you can see his opposite way here. He's got a little bit more in the tricep here. I think his flow is he's bringing his shoulder around a little bit more here. Probably more comfortable for him to hit it on that side. I think this is the pick. All the pictures you see of him doing it, it's on this side here.
I mean, I think what's nice is Brian and Siobhan are really quite nice examples. I always like to see the hand a little bit closer into the waist on this, but Cleveland on the far side, he's probably an example of how not to do it, probably, because he's not really showing himself off in the best way that he could show him. His legs look fine. Maybe he could stand up a little bit taller, because as you said before, you can squat down a little bit more, but he's completely missing showing like half of his body. Maybe he's mid-shot here though.
Maybe. And this is, for me, this is I've seen people hit it like this though, and it's too much. The torso's leaning like
Yeah, I agree.
sideways too much. Like it doesn't look proud. It just kind of looks weird to me.
Yeah, you could do it better than that for sure.
Another angle of them. So yeah, you could see really, really hunched forward here.
Yeah, bent right over for sure.
Isn't that what Arnold says? He's like, a little guy will hide away, right? Just show them, open up.
When you look at the old school guys, like the 70s and the way they hit that shot, it's exactly as you say, like they lift the chest right up to show the size that they've got here. So this is me and Dave doing it. This is probably one of Dave's best shots as well. So you've picked the 2 shots of me versus Dave, or Dave's his best. But I guess in this shot here, you can see my chest is nice and high. So is Dave's chest nice and high. I wonder if this is just the angle. It's the way it's been taken at. But I look like I'm kind of tilted there on this one. But my hands are kind of more down towards my waist, so you can see that detail in my torso. And I'm sure if that was side on, you would see the same in Dave there as well. But yeah, that's a slightly different way. One thing I often say to people is try and get your shoulders square with the floor. That kind of works quite well, rather than being angled.
Yeah. I don't really like when they tilt too much. I feel like you have a wider base up top if you keep them more squared off.
I would say it's more of an IFBB style.
Yeah.
I think I would say it's more that. Like, I think Kai Green, for example.
Oh, yeah. Really tilted. Yeah. Let's see. Get a side tricep here. I think I only have one shot of this here.
The side tricep's an interesting one because there's a lot of ways in which you can hit this shot. And there's an example here you can see of Dave hitting it with the leg back and me hitting it in the more sort of traditional way. And I like to sort of tilt forward and do it almost like a Lila Brada after I do this shot. But people often forget with both the side chest and the side tricep, it's really side body pose. So you've got to show all your strengths in that shot when you're doing it here. So what does the torso look like? Are you nice and tight? I kind of try and get that back shoulder, the opposite shoulder from the shoulder you're showing with the tricep. Try and get that a little bit in the shot. Yeah. So that you can see much more of the chest in the shot. So you look a lot bigger up top. And I think I've achieved that in that shot because Dave's got bigger arms than me, but I think I've maybe managed to outpose him a bit there. I don't know. Yeah, you judge. He beat me in that competition.
I think you're opening up a little bit more. I know my experience too is I know what you mean about bringing the shoulder across and you're going to look wider up top. For me, I tend to stay more in this position because I don't have the best pecs. So I kind of hide them a little bit by staying more in this position. And you don't really see this back pec as much.
Yeah.
One of my questions for you though is like, how can someone decide if they want to kick this leg back or if they want to keep it more in this position?
I mean, I think it depends 100%. I mean, how good are your legs? How good are your hamstrings? For one, because some people that can make your legs look a little bit slight when you go into those positions. And in that case, I would say don't put your leg back because if you can sit on it more in the classical shot, then you've got more chance of showing hamstring and bending down. You can show a little bit more quad and that sort of one. So, but it depends. You've got to try it. You've got to try it. But it's all about trying to hide those weaknesses, as you say, or find something that looks aesthetic.
Yeah. See, I like this position for me because I can really use this back knee to hit it, to jet out this hamstring and just even shove my adductor into it. And I can get a lot of sweep here. And if you look at my physique, there's probably not as much to love up here and there's more to love down here. So I tend to cater to that. And like you said, I found my legs look a little bit on the thin side if I open up like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important point. I know we've probably labored it a bit, but some guys really like certain shots that certain bodybuilders hit, their favorite guys. And some of those shots are just not going to look good on you if you're not as symmetrical or you've not got the strengths that those other guys have got. So you have to kind of make your peace with that sometimes because it might go to your detriment when you're on stage.
Absolutely. All right, let's move into the ab thigh here.
This is
that's a front double.
Shot, the abs and thighs, because with the abs and thighs, you can see different ways in which it can be hit. So we've got Mark Claxton again here. I think that photo of him is the same year in which he's posted that post. You've got Bob Waterhouse in the middle, and Nathan Williams again. So if you've got a small waist, then hitting it in the way that Nathan Williams hits it in works probably the most in your favor. If you're a little bit more blocky in the waist, then getting that little tilt that Mark Claxton's doing and showing the intercostals, the serratus, etc., I think that works really well. I think Rob's tried to do that here as well, but he's not really shown himself off in his best light compared to what Mark has.
I feel like I've seen him hit this shot better this last year. I feel like he nailed it this year. Yeah.
I think he's hit it better before. I think Mark's doing it pretty well. I don't think Nathan's practiced this shot all that much in this pose here, or maybe it's a mid shot, because I think he could hit that better as well in this one as well. The absent thighs is a hard shot, man. I don't think a lot of people do it.
Do you hit a vacuum when they call this one, or do you just stick in the pose as it is with the crunch down?
Yeah, I'll hit a vacuum on this one. What I'll do is I'll go the vacuum, then hit the abs, and then I'll move into the Mark Claxton style shot from the side, because again, it's my waist. I'm not actually blessed with as small a waist as like someone like Nathan. So for me, I'm hitting a sort of tilted shot to try and hide my weakness in that shot.
Yeah.
That's the way I do it.
Me specifically too, I do have a small waist, but I'm kind of like Nathan in the way that I don't have like a crazy six pack genetically. Mm-hmm. So my approach to it is I'll crunch down the abs for a split second and then come up and do the vacuum, because it's probably it kind of hides my rectus abdominis genetics and it cuts out a good kind of frame for me. And it's probably one of my best shots. So I just kind of crunch into it for a second to hit it to spec and then come up in the vacuum.
I love the fact the classic physique came along though, and they've made that like a shot, because
look, we can see it here.
This is a great vacuum. Like that's great. That's a great shot. I think you do yourself a disservice as well when you say you've not got as much going on up top, but I mean, your abs aren't that good. It's a nice shot, man. It works really well. Both shots on stage are good. What you're doing with your arms is interesting. It was different from what the other guys are doing. I say to people that you can either have your arms out wide and show your biceps, or you can have them nice and high, like you're doing almost in the Frank Zane sort of pose, and that can be.
I'm trying to get this come out here, the serratus and intercostals. Yeah,
it's a great shot. I mean, do it like that every time, man. Like that every time.
What else do I add here? Oh, that was just a front double. I get in the wrong folder. Let's move into the most muscular here. So this is what I struggle with. I tend to hit it more of like the hands class version. Yeah. I can't really get a good crab going. I'm kind of curious what your guidelines are when they call most muscular, because it can mean so many different things, right? It can mean a bunch of different styles of shot.
Well, I think for the crab one here you've put up, you can see this is 2017. I remember I've got some crazy vascularity going on there. You can see this shot you really need good traps for. My sister used to call me fat neck. So the bigger your traps are, the more it's going to help you out in this shot. And then it's hand position. It's where you can hold it. I've seen some guys look good holding them out in front with the fist facing the audience almost. I do it the sort of more classic style, like he's not classic, but like a Roddy Coleman or that would do on here. But you've got to try and find the position that looks good in that shot. Are you more bent over? Are you a little bit more upright? This is nice because this is an example of 3 different versions of it. I think that standing upright version for me in that shot is actually a better version. That's the same show. Dave's got great traps as well. So you can see he looks good in that shot. And then that's Mick Battersby, who's got some crazy arms on him. He's hitting it in the more sort of traditional way. He was a little bit soft in that show. And if he had been in a little bit better shape, his abs would have looked better in that shot.
Yeah.
The thing I always have to say to clients when they come into the studio though is, if you're going to do the most muscular shot, and all the poses you can do it in, with the exception of the crab, you need to have good abs, because that's the central point in the body and the focus that everyone's going to be looking at. So you have to make sure you've got those block abs when you do that shot. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I tend to default to more of the hands class, because I find if I start to round my shoulders forward, I just start to really look narrow. I don't have the most striations of the pecs. I don't have the best biceps. I have all right traps, but I just find it's probably a better deal for me to kind of show off my shoulder to waist ratio and just like kind of like my triceps actually, in the more of a hands clasp position, because I kind of have a nice X frame that way.
Yeah. The
but
hands and the hips one. You say I'm a bit blocky in the waist for me, but I'm fortunate that I've got enough muscle across my shoulders and my pecs that I can get away with that shot. I don't think that one works for everyone. Like I don't think the crab works for everyone. So the default is usually the sort of one that Mick Battersby's doing in that shot. Get guys to work on that one and then go from there.
And every federation is different too. Like WNBF will call hands on hips. Like that's one of their mandatories. So you have to hit that one with them. Awesome.
Which is good, which I like.
So let's round this discussion out here. So someone's doing their first show. They're getting ready. They're trying to figure out how to pose. They're really confused. What are just a few quick hitters to go over with them? To round it off.
Right. Okay. Believe in yourself. Yeah. Because if you don't believe in yourself, then the judges won't believe in you, and the audience won't believe in you. Remember, this is supposed to be fun, and this is what you do in the gym and everything like that. And this is your opportunity to show off everything that you've got. You're going to the muscle show. It's your first time. I know you've got to stand on stage in trunks, and you think it's a bit weird, but we're all used to this, and we love it. We want to see your muscle. Yeah. So just believe in yourself. Be confident. Do your research, find out what all the basic poses are. Start your practice early when you do it, and then practice, man. That's what you've got to do. If you can get the pose and fitness, that's a great thing. But find someone that's done this before. Get a coach. Get someone that can help you with the nuances of being able to position the arms in the right place, get the chest in the right position, get the legs in the right places, because it makes such a difference. You don't want to spend 12 months in the gym trying to put inches on your bicep and hours of eating away and slaving on the food for you not to be able to go on stage and display yourself your best you can. So that's not a quick hitter. That's my advice, I guess.
That's awesome. So where can someone contact you if they want prep coaching or posing coaching?
So there's a few places. So the website is www.proprepcoaching.com. And you can also get us on Instagram. It's ProPrepCoaching. Or you can get in touch with me at Fueled by Scott's Oats, or you can get in touch with my partner, Steff Noble, at Steff_figure pro. Yeah, that's how you can find us, and we'll help you from start to finish with the posing. We'll help you with the diet. We'll help you with the training, and we'll be on your side in your background to keep you accountable, and hopefully you'll enjoy it and it'll be fun.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I hope we can stand next to each other in 2019. I'll get dwarfed, but it'll be okay. I'll be all right.
You're taller than me. I'll get dwarfed.
All right, man. Thanks so much again.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. It was my pleasure, and good luck with the rest of the year and with the prep when it comes.
Awesome.